Hello, my name is Lester Leavitt, and you are watching video 2 in a series of about 15 videos that cover all of the elements of the MOCSIE Systems web domain. So this is just an overview of what the narrative theory is. Gene Roddenberry really covered it off well way back when. His quote is, "If man is to survive, he will have learned to take a delight in the essential differences between men and between cultures. He will learn that differences in ideas and attitudes are a delight, part of life's exciting variety, not something to fear." So we're going to talk about this fear and how to create these narratives that can appease the fear that some people have. From 2 years ago, this was when I was still in my bachelor's, doing my capstone project for my bachelor's in multimedia journalism degree. I started investigating how these community conversations can happen at a community center. I was working with the Oasis Center in Miami's Liberty City neighborhood. We talked about altering the discourse, a discourse structuration process that would work within the community, and by having events and programs and projects and getting youth and other people involved, and how it would bring about social change by enhancing community dialogue, identifying solutions for some intractable problems, trying to get some national media presence, and then alter the agenda setting process and end up with new policy that way. What I was up against, and when I was designing that in a multimedia journalism course, is the idea that people used to use a push media. They would push ideas onto you by marketing, by pushing these marketing ideas onto you. But in the 21st century, we have so much media out there that people have put this dome over top of them, or they live in echo chambers. The trait of an echo chamber is that it's a pull media environment now. So unless you act aggressively, unless you are proactive in pulling in ideas, you're not going to get any messages in to people. And so you can't alter the discourse in a pull media environment in the ways that we're used to doing it. The reformation of the unwilling was a classic example of doing that was when the movie Avatar came out. The contradictions were just amazing to me, because it was nominated for 9 Academy Awards. It won 3 of them. It was the first movie ever to gross $2 billion. And people who went to see it should have disagreed with the messages that were embedded in it. The movie had embedded messages about how awful colonialism is, and corporate greed, and paganism. These messages were pulled in through this protective dome. So the movie Avatar got people who would otherwise not open themselves up for these narratives. It got them to actually allow those narratives to come into their environment. So this is the idea of how to structure narratives at this point in time. We're going to look to, in order to understand this from a theoretical standpoint, from a research standpoint, I need you to understand what I consider to be a narrative community. One of the researchers that I subscribe to on this calls a narrative community a basis for political action. So if you look at the dotted line here, this is the narrative community, which I'm going to be talking about. Then these are the components within the narrative community. You also need to understand an interpretive monopoly from this perspective. So narrative as an interpretive monopoly means that people in this narrative community subscribe to the idea that being gay is a lifestyle choice. I was raised a gay Mormon, and that's not a good combination. And so the interpretive monopoly says that being gay is a lifestyle choice. If I went through proper therapy, if I went through and with enough diligence and prayer and fasting, I would be able to be less attracted to this lifestyle choice. So this sustaining institution that keeps this narrative community going is religious-based bigotry. But religious-based bigotry isn't the only sustaining institution out there. When you talk about women as homemakers, this is the interpretive monopoly that is sustained by culture and tradition. So the sustaining institution in this narrative is culture and tradition. The traits of these sustaining institutions are that they are high in social capital, they are a closed policy network, and holes in these policy networks are easily closed by the highly concentrated power in the hierarchy. So these are traits of these types of narrative communities where an interpretive monopoly can be sustained. And where you see these manifest in the United States at this point in time is the Red River Women's Clinic in North Dakota, which is now facing some of the most strict laws that were rushed through and pushed through, and much as many other states are doing it now, and marginalizing the health of women in the process. And Rush Limbaugh versus Sandra Fluke. That was another interpretive monopoly where we saw the conflict take the national stage. Other places where we can deal with these narrative communities, an interesting analysis is to look at a blue oasis like Salt Lake City, Utah. Utah, as we all know in the United States, is one of the most staunchly conservative Republican states in the nation. But they have this blue oasis in Salt Lake City. For 2 years in a row now, the underwear run in Salt Lake City has broken the world record. So in the middle of this very, very conservative state, we have a blue oasis. So how do you deal with these blue oases throughout the United States? Austin, Texas is another one. Omaha, Nebraska is another one. Very progressive islands in the middle of these deep red states. So many states in the United States are now so deep red that they have what they call veto-proof Republican majorities. So my research question that I want to ask is, how can a PFLAG group, which is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, in Salt Lake City, can a PFLAG group, something that small where you meet around a dining room table in somebody's home, can these small community groups have any, is there a mechanism where they can have any kind of an impact on policy making in these deep red states? And so that's a research question which I want to ask. So let's look back at other narrative communities now and see where this PFLAG group is. PFLAG is over here. They're saying people are born gay, but they have this interpretive monopoly on this side over here that says that being gay is a lifestyle choice, and they've got this very, very powerful sustaining institution. This is an ostensive view of narratives, and this is a performative view of narrative. And these narratives here are actually very threatening to this over here. The ostensive view personified can be, I can use the example of the Family Policy Network. Alex Mason is their spokesman. He gets invited onto Fox News and conservative radio stations. He's very intelligent. He's got 2 master's degrees. But his ostensive view of this is that young Christians have no stomach for controversy. I actually found this when I was researching out and finding out that 6 out of 10, or even some estimates, 8 out of 10 young adults between the age of 18 and 20, or 18 and 30, are leaving Christianity for good. And so his answer to that is young Christians have no stomach for controversy. They've bought into the lie that the truth can be different for everyone. So that's the ostensive view. The truth is capital T truth. There's only one truth. It's defined by the Bible, and it prohibits homosexual activity, and it also prohibits women from getting an abortion. And these are ostensive views. When you are looking at a performative view, you have to look at ideographs. So this is the very foundation upon which we can build the rest of this discussion now. And I'm going to keep this video very short from this point in time, and I'm going to go through very, very quickly and point to where you can find more information on the webpage about that. As bricks are to barriers, ideographs are to narratives. So we're going to look at narratives being constructed out of ideographs. So my talks, my research presentations at conferences have primarily centered around the idea of having institutional memory as the brain or the glue that would create this institution itself. There's 2 very, very good videos which I would recommend that you watch on this page here. On the immediate goal page, there's 2 videos which I really want you to watch there. So if you go back to the home page, click on immediate goal, you'll find these videos. They're going to be very informative, and they're going to tell lots more about these diagrams here. But this institutional memory has split into a global domain from policy campaigns and media campaigns. That's very important. And on those video presentations which I gave you there, I talk about the Elizabeth Smart ideograph. Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped, and now she went to Johns Hopkins earlier this year in 2013. Went to Johns Hopkins University, and so how to archive her talk there in this institutional memory is something I really want to go over very quickly. So she was a public speaking engagement. This is media. So this is public speaking. It's listening. It's archived in the database under listening. She was a public speaking engagement. It was a symposium, and she from there was an academics environment. So that's how this would be archived from a media standpoint. From a policy standpoint, she was talking about the exploitation. So this is women's rights. And she was talking about the sexual exploitation of women at that conversation in Johns Hopkins. She talked about how the virgin purity test in the Mormon culture was something that was translated in her home into an abstinence-only ideal. And so the idea that she didn't leave her captors was rooted in the fact that she felt absolutely worthless because she remembered a conversation in school where somebody likened women for virginity to a piece of gum. And once somebody's chewed a piece of gum, nobody wants the piece of gum. So once a woman has lost her purity, and then her worth is gone. And so she didn't feel like she was worth anything to anybody. So she didn't even try to escape her captors. And these all stem from and they can be rooted into a terror management theory analysis. This is an artist's rendering of the Mormon plan of salvation. What my research is focusing on is this degree of reactivity to a worldview threat. That will be my way of determining how entrenched this sustaining institution is. In this plan of salvation of the Mormon theology, there is no place for gays, there's no room for feminists, and up until 1978, there was no room for blacks. So this is the sustaining institution, and this is myself and the PFLAG groups, and this is that worldview threat that terror management theory talks about. So we've got the ostensive view and the performative view. Other examples of interpretive monopolies that trigger worldview threats are zero-sum thinking narratives. If you gain anything, then that automatically means I've lost something. So it's a zero-sum thinking. That also leads to interpretive monopolies. Also lead to just wars. Timothy McVeigh felt justified in bombing the Alfred P. Murrah building, and Andres Breivik felt justified. He had a just war mentality when he went and shot all of those children and the youth on the island. So those reactions are this degree of reactivity, and they got those narratives in their head from sustaining institutions. And that's why narrative theory is such an important way out of this. And contact hypothesis is another topic that we will be, this webpage will delve into and my research delves into. If the following 6 conditions are met, prejudices can be reduced. So there's built-in mechanisms into my idea of sustaining institutions for change that would employ some of that. And all of that's going to be visible by watching the videos when I get them up there under the 2014 Compendium Conference tab. So I encourage you to look there. One more thing I want to delve into now is talk about the emergent narrative community. So since these two communities cannot find common ground, and one is actually threatening to the other one, the idea of engineering a shared premise comes into play and creating an emergent narrative community. We can't deconstruct the interpretive monopolies. Interpretive monopolies by their very nature, and these sustaining institutions by their very nature, are highly, highly resistant to being deconstructed. So you're not going to deconstruct these narratives. We're going to have to displace them. And in order to displace them, we have to form an emergent narrative community. So some of the successful emergent narrative communities that we've seen in recent time have been about gay marriage, because the Supreme Court just struck down DOMA and sent Prop 8 back to California and defeated that. So the gay community has been very, very proactive in creating emergent narrative communities. One way which I saw that was very effective, it was actually entertaining to watch, was they would ask people on camera, how old were you when you remembered choosing to be heterosexual? So that opens up this door that says, oh, I don't remember choosing to be heterosexual, so maybe you didn't choose to be gay. That's one way to create an emergent narrative community. Celebrities are another way to create emergent narrative communities. This is Glee, 6 Feet Under, Ellen DeGeneres, Anderson Cooper. When these celebrities come out, or when these shows come out and they portray gay individuals and lesbian individuals and transgendered individuals as normal, then people all of a sudden create a new emergent narrative community and said, well, I really like Ellen DeGeneres, I really like Anderson Cooper, and I watch Glee every week. Another way to do this is ask somebody to tell me about someone personally you know who is out and gay. That, more than anything, is the way that we are winning in the gay community. We are winning converts, if you want to call them that, from Republicans, because they have a son or a daughter who has come out. And that creates an emergent narrative community. So what about this PFLAG group in Salt Lake City? What are we going to do about them? Let's return to that just before we close here. So remember my research question, how can this PFLAG group impact policy? Well, they can do this by creating emergent narrative communities, by meeting people by creating some new common ground. You're not going to win on a head-to-head battle. So the measure of success, this is what was accomplished by creating these emergent narrative communities, is that some people will stop and actually think. As Dr. Hugh Miller, my dissertation chair, says in his book, Governing Narratives, most likely I will do what I've done before, though maybe not this time. And that's how we measure success in an emergent narrative community.